Hello everyone and welcome to my The Bold Fans channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Daphne Rose stood in the middle of the Forrester Creations foyer, clutching a manila envelope so tightly that the edges began to tear. The late afternoon light shone through the glass walls, dazzling and indifferent, revealing every face that passed. She had not come to the meeting. She hadn't come for fashion. She had come because the outcomes in her hands would not stay theoretical any longer. Steffy Forrester emerged off the elevator, followed by Carter in a half-step. They were conversing in the hushed, careful tones of two individuals who had spent the previous week attempting to keep a secret that refused to stay hidden. When Steffy saw Daphne, the conversation came to a standstill. Something about Daphne's posture, rigid, unblinking, the envelope clutched like evidence, told them both that the tightly regulated timeline they had attempted to establish had already passed. "We need to talk," Daphne remarked. Her voice was steady, as it is when the alternative is shouting. Now, Carter relocated first, to a secluded location. "Daphne, not you." She avoided looking at him. Her. Steffy's face had gone intentionally blank. The expression she adopted when the ground beneath her feet was no longer stable. She nodded once and pointed to the little conference room off the main corridor. Daphne followed without pausing to see if Carter would intercede. He didn't. He merely stood there, watching the two women vanish behind the closing door, the full weight of what was about to happen resting on his shoulders. Daphne did not sit anywhere in the room. She placed the envelope on the table between them and waited for Steffy to look at it. "I went to the doctor this morning," Daphne explained. "This is not for me. For the persistent inquiries. Carter has been different. Distant in ways that do not correspond to the story he keeps repeating. I began searching for answers in the only way I knew how. I discovered more than I expected." Steffy laid her palm on the back of a chair. She didn't reach for the envelope. "Daphne, whatever you think, you're pregnant." The two words fell like a physical blow. Steffy's breath caught. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the faint hum of the building's climate control system. Steffy's serenity finally shattered, allowing the truth to emerge. "How did you? I had the right questions and the right people who still answer them when I call." Daphne raised her voice for the first time. "You and Carter. Night. The night you returned from Monaco devastated. He was already breaking down over the future we might never have. You slept together. And now you're carrying a child who may belong to any of the men you've been lying to." Steffy's grip on the chair tightened. "I discovered out 3 days ago. I have not even told Finn yet. I was looking for the correct way. There is no right way." The explosion Daphne had been holding back suddenly let loose. "You do not get to manage this. You don't get to pick the timetable as my husband walks about with guilt on his face, and I sit at home wondering why the man I love can't look me in the eyes. You took something that belonged to me, my marriage, my trust, the future we were fighting for, and used it as a fleeting comfort. And now there is a pregnancy. Child. Evidence that one night was not a mistake. It was a permanent remake of everything." Steffy trembled as if the words were heavy. "I've never wanted this. I never wanted any of it. I was intoxicated, angry, and scared that my marriage had already ended. Carter was the only person who understood what it was like. Happen. I've been hating myself for it ever since. Finding out I'm pregnant simply amplified my self-hatred." "You think self-hatred is enough?" Daphne's laugh was harsh and unfunny. "Do you believe feeling awful about it balances the scales? Every night, my husband came home and embraced me as I grieved over the children we would never have. He vowed that we would find another way. Adoption. Surrogacy. Whatever it takes. And the entire time, he was aware that he had already planned a life with someone else. With you." Steffy's eyes were filled with tears that refused to fall. "I was planning to tell Finn first. Then Carter. Then you. I wanted the truth to come from me, not from an envelope and a confrontation in a conference room. You lost control of the order the moment you chose silence." Daphne said, taking a step closer. Do you know what it's like to sit across from the man you love and realize that the distance in his eyes isn't due to your diagnosis? It is about a secret that he is still keeping. A secret involving the lady who has always had everything I desired. The family name, the children, the unassailable position in this world, and still thought my husband was accessible for comfort. The allegation hung between them. Steffi opened her mouth, closed it, and tried again. I don't own everything. I may already have damaged my marriage. My child is on the way, and his paternity is a question mark hovering over two families. My father caught us debating about the secret and forced us to break the silence. I've been drowning in the effects for weeks. This pregnancy is just the part that finally made the water rise over my head. Daphne's voice became colder and more precise. Then drown. But you don't get to drag the rest of us down with you while you decide when it's best to surface. Finn deserves to know before the rest of the organization does. Carter should quit lying to my face. And I deserve to quit being the only person in the room who understands what has been going on. Steffi eventually grabbed for the envelope. Her fingers trembled as she opened it and examined its contents. The confirmation was clinical and unequivocal. Positive. Early. The timing matched the night she'd spent attempting to forget. I need to tell Finn tonight, she replied quietly. Before this becomes something he hears from someone else. You should have told him the morning after, Daphne replied. You should have informed Carter the same day you found out. You should have informed me before I had to seek for the truth like a detective in my own marriage. Every day you waited was another day you put your comfort ahead of our right to the truth. The door opened without a knock. Carter stood there, pallid, his gaze shifting between the two women and the open package on the table. He had plainly determined that waiting outside was no longer an option. I heard raised voices, he explained. Daphne. She knows. Steffi's voice sounded cold. She knows about the night. She knows about the pregnancy. Carter's shoulders sagged, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. He stared at Daphne with a look that was equal parts shame and horror. I was about to inform you. Swear I was. The pregnancy alters the mathematics. I needed to be certain of the facts before destroying what we still had. Daphne turned on him, unleashing the full force of the explosion she had been building since opening the envelope that morning. You needed to make sure. You needed time. I've been living with the uncertainty of our future for months. I've been the one attempting to remain hopeful as the ground shifted. And the entire while, you were keeping a secret that could render any hope I still had irrelevant. Carter is a child. A youngster that may be yours. With her. Carter stepped into the room and closed the door. I know exactly what I did. I know the cost. I've replayed that night 1,000 times, looking for the exact moment I should have walked away. I did not. That failure is mine. The pregnancy makes it permanent in ways I never wanted. But I will not stand here and tell you that I was indifferent. Every day thereafter has been a calculation of how much damage I can still avoid. I failed that calculation as well. Steffi stared between them, the full weight of the collision she had helped produce setting in. This isn't a competition to see who is the most broken. There is a youngster involved now. Finn needs to know. You each must decide what the truth means for the marriages you are still attempting to save. Daphne's gaze fastened on Steffi with unwavering clarity, leaving no space for negotiation. You will not carry it alone. That is the only aspect of this that I agree with. The remainder will be detrimental to everyone in this room, as well as those who care about us. Finn, Ridge, Brooke. The entire complex complexity of the life we have created. You started the domino effect the night you determined my hubby was available. The pregnancy is simply the part that ensures none of us can pretend the dominoes never existed. The hush that followed was complete. Outside the meeting room, Forrester Creations' regular operations continued. Phones ringing, footfall passing, and the distant sound of someone laughing in the design studio. Inside the room, 3 people stood in the aftermath of a single night that had refused to stay in the past. Steffi was the first to move. She took up the envelope, gently folded it, and placed it in her bag. "I am heading home. I'm telling Finn tonight. After that, the remainder of the truth belongs to all of us." She walked away, not looking back. Carter and Daphne remained, the distance between them unexpectedly wide. "I'm not sure how we'll recover from this," Daphne added. The wrath had not left her voice, but something calmer and more weary had begun to emerge. "I'm not sure if I can look at you the same way. I'm not sure if the world we were attempting to create still exists." Carter's response came slowly, the words of a man who had finally run out of options. "Nor do I. But the lying is over. Whatever occurs next, it will take place in the open." They each departed the meeting room separately. Daphne went out of the building into the bright Los Angeles afternoon, aware that the life she had been attempting to save had been forever altered. Carter went back to his office and sat in quiet, staring at the wall, waiting for the next inevitable confrontation. That evening, Steffy stood in the living room of the Cliff House, telling Finn everything. The night with Carter. Weeks of stillness. The pregnancy had only been confirmed a few days ago. Finn listened attentively, just as he had when she initially told him about Monaco and Sheila. When she finished, he did not erupt. He merely sat down, color gone from his cheeks, and stared at the floor, as if the answers were written there. "Who is it?" he inquired at last. "I don't know yet," Steffy replied. "I won't know until we test." The silence that followed was longer and more intense than any dispute could be. Outside, the ocean maintained its never-ending pace. Inside the house, the future that Finn and Steffy had been attempting to rebuild transformed once more into something neither of them could yet identify. Across the city, Daphne sat alone in the house she shared with Carter, allowing the full power of the finding to sink. The pregnancy was no longer rumored or suspected. It was a reality that altered every talk she and Carter had ever had about children, trust, and the type of marriage they were capable of forming. The explosion she had set up in the conference room had been necessary. The stillness that followed would endure the longest. In the following days, the truth would spread in ever-widening circles. Ridge would learn the latest information. Brooke would accept the latest fracture in the family she had spent her life attempting to keep together. Even if the official version did not make it to the press, the corporation would be shaken. And somewhere in the midst of it all, a kid would continue to grow, unconcerned about the confusion of its possible parentage, while the people who had caused the situation battled to decide whether love could withstand the knowledge of what it had already cost. Daphne's explosion marked the point at which the secret became unmanageable. Everything that followed would be a long, tough process of dealing with the repercussions. Daphne Walton has spent recent weeks rebuilding the foundations of a marriage she once thought was irreparably destroyed. The infertility diagnosis, the impetuous flight, the uncertain return, and the gradual rebuilding of trust with Carter had tested every ounce of her emotional discipline. That carefully constructed stability is shattered in a single afternoon when a piece of information she was never supposed to have falls into her hands with the power of a physical blow. Steffy Forrester Finnegan is pregnant. The timing, secrecy, and unanswered concerns about Steffy's night with Carter suggest only one possible conclusion. Daphne's response is neither measured nor secret. It is an explosion that shatters the carefully kept hush around the entire event, forcing every involved party into the open. The revelation is made by a series of everyday details that suddenly align into something permanent. Daphne has been handling a series of follow-up medical appointments on her own fertility possibilities. While arranging schedules and retrieving information, she comes across a secondary file that should never have crossed her path, an early pregnant confirmation tied to Steffy's name and dated to the exact time frame following Steffy and Carter's night together at Forrester Creations. The laboratory notation is clinical and straightforward. The emotional impact is quick and complete. Daphne stands in a quiet medical office corridor, feeling the entire reconstructed narrative of her marriage crumble in real time. She doesn't wait for a secluded place or a properly planned moment. She drives straight to Forrester Creations, strides through the executive floor with a focus that colleagues later describe as clearly altered, and finds Steffy in the middle of a regular design review. The confrontation begins before the door is completely closed. Daphne's voice is merely controlled in the sense that it does not reach scream level. The content is pure detonation. She names the pregnancy. She specifies the timing. She refers to the night that both Steffy and Carter had sworn was a one-time, regrettable error that would never be repeated or publicized. Each sentence lands as a separate charge. Steffy's attempts to interrupt, contextualize, and ask for a lower volume are dismissed. Daphne has passed the point of negotiation. She is delivering the full weight of a betrayal that has been building for weeks in quiet. Daphne's rage stems from more than just the physical reality of her pregnancy. It's the thick lie that surrounds it. She returned to Carter, feeling they were rebuilding from a common place of honesty following her leave. She accepted his assurances that the separation had caused no permanent damage other than the agony they were already dealing with. She went through discussions about future options. Adoption, surrogacy, experimental treatments, while the man across from her was already aware of a potential kid with another woman. The idea that Steffy had continued to move through the workplace, family gatherings, and intimate chats with Carter while bearing this secret sharpens Daphne's anguish and makes it more focused. The infertility, which had previously felt like a private sadness, now sits beside a pregnancy that feels like an intentional erasing of her role in the story. When Steffy is finally able to put together a defense, the severity of the attack fragments it. She acknowledges her pregnancy. She acknowledges the timing. She tries to explain the sequence of anxiety, calculation, and delayed decision-making that occurred after the positive result. She believes that the matter is more complicated than Daphne's binary of betrayal suggests. The words do not land. Daphne has already reached the point where explanations serve just as additional evidence of management rather than sorrow. She focuses on the core point, which Steffy is unable to answer clearly. How long did you intend to conceal this from me? And what version of the future were you creating while I was still viewing our marriage as a collaborative project? The argument progresses beyond the initial disclosure to a broader inventory of wounds. Daphne recalls the night of the initial encounter, the subsequent promise to be silent, the professional intimacy that persisted under the guise of corporate necessity, and the latest distress call assignment that brought Steffy and Carter back into close collaboration. Each element is reframed as part of a continuous pattern, rather than a collection of individual lapses. Steffy's attempts to detach the pregnancy from the greater history of secrecy exacerbate Daphne's suspicion that she is being asked to accept a half explanation. The volume rises. Staff outside the workplace begin to realize that the debate is no longer contained. A junior designer pauses near the door, then retreats. Within minutes, the disruption attracted secondary attention from the floor. Carter comes while the confrontation is still in full swing. He is summoned by a curt message from Steffy and walks into a situation that immediately demonstrates how far the secret has eluded their grasp. Daphne unleashes her fury on him without hesitation. The questions she poses are the ones he has been dreading since the morning after the office encounter. How he could sit across from her and discuss their future knowing a pregnancy was possible. How he could allow the silence to continue once medical confirmation was obtained. And how he could prioritize damage control over the basic honesty their reconciliation had supposedly required. Carter's comments are both exact and inadequate. He admits his failure. He tries to characterize the chain of decisions as a series of compounding blunders, rather than a single deliberate betrayal. Daphne rejects the framing. According to her, the pattern is clear. Protecting the secret has constantly ranked higher than protecting the marriage. When the loudness becomes unbearable, Ridge steps in as the institutional authority. He does not try to moderate the emotional content. He imposes a temporary structural pause. Separate rooms, postponed further discussion, and an instant assessment of whether the professional environment can continue to function under the existing conditions. The intervention provides a few hours of physical separation. It doesn't fix anything. Daphne exits the building with the obvious realization that the marriage she returned to mend is no longer the fundamental context for her decisions. Carter remains behind, under Ridge's direct supervision. Steffy returns to the Cliff home to face the second wave of consequences that the exposure has triggered. Finn finds out about the pregnancy through the expedited network of disclosures that follows Daphne's eruption. The information reaches him not as a carefully delivered confession but as a confirmed truth already in circulation. His response is a calm, thorough evaluation of all interactions since the night of the initial encounter. The pregnancy transforms the previous betrayal from a one-time event into a continuous reality with long-term consequences. Questions about paternity, timing, and what Steffy meant to do with the discovery before Daphne forced the subject all fall into a new hierarchy of urgency. Finn and Steffy's already tentative breakup becomes more permanent. Kelly and Hayes' shared parenting continues, despite logistical challenges. Any remaining discussion concerning the marriage's future is on hold until clarity is obtained, which no longer appears to be possible.